All right, what's going on, guys? Today we have Derek Ingram on a little bit of a remote chat. We're going to just talk some Foresight, talk some Golf Canada stuff, and then talk about some personal life as well. We'll take Derek out for a little 30-minute chat. So should be fun, get to know him, get to know what he does, and hear some great stories, I'm sure. So Derek, we really appreciate you jumping on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew. Super fun.
Yeah, so I guess to start, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, history in golf, how you started, where it's gotten you today, and just like an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, no, I don't know if we have all day for this, but I born and raised in Winnipeg, huge Winnipeg Jets fan. Was the youngest of four brothers, so grew up trying to be like my brothers and like my dads and uncles. So that's how I got involved in golf. I used to have to caddy because I was the smallest and the youngest. And they said, oh, once you're good enough, you can start to play. So I practiced by myself on a playground with a wooden shafted club. And I'm really not that old, but anyway, until I got better than all of them. And then I got to play with my uncles and brothers, and which is a little bit about me. I'm pretty competitive and a little bit stubborn. So, but yeah, I played college golf at a small junior college in Texas. I have a chemistry degree with a major or science degree with a major in chemistry. I was going to actually go into the School of Pharmacy. And I decided to try being a golf pro for 1 year. My dad allowed me to do that for 1 year before I was going to go back and become a pharmacist. And I just loved it. I love people. I love coaching. I love playing. And that was, that was 1993. So that was, pretty close to almost 32 years ago. Super quick bio. I was an assistant pro in Manitoba for a couple of years. I became the youngest head pro in Manitoba and one of the youngest in Canada. I did that for 3 years. Resigned to go play the Canadian Tour for a living, played for 2.5 years, wanted to play on the PGA Tour. And really, that was the point where I kind of saw what was going on out on the Canadian Tour, the PGA Tour Canada, like how there wasn't much of a program or a path for Canadian players. And I wanted to be a Canadian on the PGA Tour. And there was a few role models, but not many. And I just, for myself, I didn't have a coach, I saw all the gaps between how where I was and how I wanted to get there. And I realized, and I was also coaching and teaching a bunch of players when I was out there trying to play, which is a bad recipe to be a great player, but a good recipe to be a coach. So anyway, some of the things, the R&D from, playing the Canadian Tour, after I came back and I focused pretty much exclusively and full-time on coaching golf, and kind of started with a small job with Golf Canada, Golf Manitoba, founded the University of Manitoba golf team with Garth Gudbranson, and just kind of devoted my life to coaching at that point.
Yeah. So I'm a former athlete as well. I was more hockey based growing up. But I guess similar story where I was the youngest kid and you get thrown in net, you get thrown in the crappy positions to start, but you sort of, from that, I feel like you learn and you blossom. But as a player, you said you coached a couple of guys. Did you always have that like coaching mindset? Or I know as a player, you don't want to focus on what's after my career, but did you always sort of know like, oh, maybe this is something I'm going to strive to? I have this like instinctive aspect in my game or in my relationships with guys.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to play and I love to play and I love to compete, but I'm also a real people person. I love people, and I enjoyed really helping people achieve their goals. Even before, when I was a club pro, before I quit to play, I really liked helping players achieve their goals. So, and kind of solving problems. And when I realized that, hey, it's going to take me another 5 or more years to get to, maybe the PGA Tour, or back then it was even the Korn Ferry Tour, it was called the buy.com Tour back then. I wasn't going to be able to afford it and may never do it. I realized that, hey, I also love to coach, and I've been doing this kind of on the side. And I do love people. And so I really switched. When I decide, boom, I'm not going to be a player on the PGA Tour, I focus more on how can I help Canadians get to the PGA Tour. It was never a goal of mine to coach on the PGA Tour. It was always a goal of mine to help players from Canada get from being a really good junior player to an international level junior player to a good amateur player to one of the best amateur players in the world, and then help them from there to transition from amateur golf to the PGA Tour, which is a long path in itself.
Yeah. And would you say, so obviously coming to Canada, golf is, just in general, golf's played 5-6 months out of the year, except for indoors, which, we have a hand in that. But how have you seen it evolve from your time? I'm sure, back then there's there probably wasn't that many scouts, there wasn't that many opportunities, but now have you seen it evolve into the junior golf and then also the opportunities up into the pro level as well?
Well, I think from a, college coaches and, now have their pulse on what's going on in Canada, where they never used to. For the most part, it was the wild, wild west out here. You might find a college coach who was good and catch the odd good player in Canada. And it was very rare to see college coaches come up to Canada for the Canadian Junior or other big events. Now, not so rare. And then from how things have changed from a technology standpoint, back in, I believe it was 1996 or 1997, I ran a simulator place in Winnipeg. It had 10 simulators. And the difference between what I have here in my garage with the Foresight Quad and our simulator, although I do want to get a Falcon, by the way, but that's for another discussion, to what it was back then is incredible. And so, and I think you're right, like the weather in Manitoba is not great, but people are practicing and getting great feedback and getting way better all winter long now with some of the technologies that are available.
Yeah, love it. Love to hear it. And I guess sort of growing into that, but I guess to start, could you share sort of the main responsibilities as a Golf Canada team coach, head coach, and sort of your introduction, maybe when that started and how it's grown to now?
Yeah, well, I'll talk about that first. My first job was with the RCGA back before it was called Golf Canada, so it was called the Royal Canadian Golf Association back in 2000. And my spot, originally applied for a job as an assistant coach with our junior team. And the gentleman back then, Doug Roxburgh, Golf Hall of Famer in Canada, called me and said, "Well, actually, we're not going to do that position. We're gonna hire a series of regional coaches across Canada, so 8 or 10 regional coaches, and we'd love you to be the regional coach in Manitoba." It was like a $2,000 a year position. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. I was doing a bunch of other teaching and coaching for the U of M golf team, helping Golf Manitoba out, et cetera, et cetera. I had my coaching business. And then he asked me to do a training camp for the players going to the World Junior and then take them to the World Junior in Japan. I was a young guy, pretty good coach, and a pretty good player. So I think they wanted a younger player, a guy who could relate with the players. So that first team was J.C. Deacon, James Lepp, Richard Scott, and Kevin Blue. So 4 of the best junior and amateur players in Canada at that time. They were juniors at that point, but unreal. J.C. Deacon's the head coach at University of Florida. Kevin Blue was the chief sport officer at Golf Canada. James Lepp won in the PGA Tour Canada 3 or 4 times and played in the Korn Ferry Tour, played a bunch of PGA Tour events, won the NCAA individual Division I championships. And Richard Scott played the Korn Ferry Tour. So these guys were superstars. But anyway, but at a young age, these guys were 15, 16, 17, but they developed into great players. Anyway, I did a training camp for him, took him to Japan. We had a blast. And for me, it just grew from that. Players, once I started to spend time with them, just started asking Golf Canada for more of my time. And the next thing you know, I moved from like a very, very part-time position to more part-time position. And then I became an assistant coach with our junior boys program. And then our assistant coach with our junior boys and our amateur team. And then I became the head coach of our women's program. And then they asked me if I'd like to be the head coach for our women's program or the head coach for our men's program. If they wanted me to move, they really wanted me to move over back to the men's side. So I moved back to the men's side. And I've been involved with and I was the head coach for our junior men's program and our amateur team. And then we developed a young pro program, and they asked me to be in charge of our young pro program. So that's kind of where we are today, with adding a bunch more excellent coaches. It's not all Derek Ingram, I can assure you that. The program's really grown and we're really proud of it.
Yeah. So you really evolved with like Golf Canada throughout the stages, eh? Like, awesome to see.
I really did. Yeah.
So I guess like touching on that, could you maybe touch on, you said you've been with players and at the age of 15, 16, all the way up to the pro levels. How does that evolve? Like, how does your coaching evolve throughout a player's journey as well? Teaching them how the game, I'm sure the mental side has changes throughout the amateur to pro level, but also the skill set as well.
Yeah, well, I'm a big guy in measuring stuff, and trying to help players get from A to B. And so, going from being a good junior player to the PGA Tour is just a gigantic stretch. So what are the best junior players in the world doing compared to what you're doing currently right now? And then when you become one of the best junior players in the world, you transition into amateur golf. What do the best amateur players in the world look like from a stat standpoint, from a result standpoint? from a speed standpoint, from a fitness standpoint, mentally, what do they look like? And, how can we close that gap to help take you from a good amateur player or a good college player to one of the best college players or amateur players in the world? And then when they turn professional ascent, again, we do that gap analysis. Here's what here's what the best players in the PGA Tour are looking like. And, even comparing as a junior or amateur, looking at what the best players on the planet do is good as well. But it's so far away. We've got to have something that's a little bit more reachable in the next 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months. But really help them, really help them get from here to there, and then reassess and keep doing that. And so that's a lot of what it looks like. And in every area, and fortunately with Golf Canada, we've had, great strength and conditioning coaches and physiotherapists. And we've got, fantastic sports psychologists. We've used Dr. Adrian Leslie Toogood for many, many years, like literally for many years. So like a Brooke Henderson, Corey Connors, Mackenzie Hughes, and Taylor Pendrith, all these players, worked with, Greg Redmond and Dr. Adrian Leslie Toogood. And we've added more staff as we've grown and we've added some sponsorships and partnerships like yourself and others. We've been able to grow our program to have other unreal staff. So that's kind of what that journey has looked like.
Yeah. And do you find, to touch on that journey a little bit, especially in the junior and sort of the college era, you said you like to look out, 3, 5, 6 months ahead, maybe a year ahead, but do you find it hard for the players? Obviously a player's dream is like, as a kid, they're like, I want to go play on the PGA Tour. I want to play in the big leagues. Do you find it hard to, get them to narrow their focus down to be able to be like, hey, let's focus on this year ahead, not the full, end goal. Let's focus on it bit by bit.
Yeah, it was easier back, 15 years ago or 20 years ago when it was easier to hold your attention on something like, hey, our goal is to win the Canadian Junior. Our goal is to get to the U.S. Junior and be a quarterfinalist. Our goal is to get an NCAA Division I scholarship. Our goal is to play in the U.S. Amateur. Oh, now our goal is to win the U.S. Amateur or be a finalist in the U.S. Amateur. And now I think players are players. So if you're a good coach, good communicator, and you show them the step-by-step to get there, they're all in. And I've been fortunate. Like I've worked with some of the best players on the planet and the best players on the planet from Canada. And, I've been pretty grateful and really fortunate to be where I am, because they're all super highly motivated, unreal people, great to work with, extremely coachable. We have a lot of, no one works harder, Andrew. Nobody works harder, but we have a lot of fun doing it as well. We talk a lot of hockey, we talk a lot of golf, we talk a lot of sports. We work hard, but we enjoy that work.
Yeah, definitely. I guess to touch on that too, do you have a favorite memory with Team Canada? Maybe the time you're most proud of yourself or a player? I know you have a ton, and I sort of have a question down the road of just golf memories as well, but do you have like a top memory in mind off the top of the head?
Yeah, I've got probably my favorite. I've got two favorite Team Canada moments. One is Corey Connors being a semifinalist at the a finalist at the U.S. Amateur, where he lost in the final to Gun Yang, but earned his way into Augusta National. In that tournament, where he was a finalist, we had a number of guys make the cut and play great at the U.S. Amateur. Taylor Pendrith played great. Garrett Rank played great, made the cut. Adam Svensson played really well and made the cut. So we had, at the U.S. Amateur, we had this Team Canada, and I'm missing one other player. I think it might have been, I'm not sure if it was Alvin Choi or Mac, or if it might have been Chris Hamrick. But anyway, we had Team Canada at the U.S. Amateur, and we were kind of dominating. And people were taking what's with all these Canadians at the U.S. Amateur? And Corey ended up being a finalist there, and just that feeling of helping a young man achieve his dream and going to Augusta as an amateur was incredibly powerful and great, for me to play a small role in. And I think the second was at the World Amateur, and I think it was in 2012, the World Amateur in Japan. The team was Adam Svensson, Taylor Pendrith, and Corey Connors. And we finished second. We lost by one stroke for the gold medal at the World Amateur to the United States. And that was also one of my favorite. Obviously, I wanted to win it. Incredible memory. But I remember Adam Svensson was playing, and I would never do this to anybody, but he was the first guy. And Taylor Pendrith was winning his match by a lot. And he was going to be the swing. It was when the scores were tied through two players, because three play, two count. So the third, if it's a tie, they go to the third score. And Taylor was going to be our third score, and he had his guy pretty much drumped. And that was he was beating Bo Hostler. So Adam Svensson was playing Denny McCarthy, and I on the way to the 17th green to the 18th tee box, I walked with Adam, and I never do this, Andrew, but I put my arm around him like, Adam, you got to birdie this hole. We need you to birdie this hole. He looks at me, he's like, he probably never heard me say that in 8 years of coaching. He's like, okay, DI, okay, I'll do it. And boom, he slams it down the middle on this par 4, and it was long, but he hit it really far. I guess he had the adrenaline going, and then he hit a sand wedge up here about 4 feet and canned it. So then it was basically Corey and Bryson DeChambeau in the last group, a 2-ball coming in, and they were tied. And Corey hit, I didn't say anything to Corey, but he hit his drive way down. Like the adrenaline was pumping way down there. He had like a lob wedge in, and Bryson hit a big high slice into the right rough. And so all we needed is a tie, and we win the World M. Anyway, he hit it short and crooked. Bryson hit like an 8 or 9 iron in from the right rough, and he absolutely stuffed it to like 6-7 feet right of the hole. And Corey had a lob wedge in from like 90 yards, and it was directly at the flag. I thought he was going to hole it, but it went about 30 feet by. It was a perfect shot, but the adrenaline was pumping through his veins. Anyway, long story. Corey putts his up to like 3.5 feet. Bryson buries his. They win by 1 shot.
But yeah, a little heartbreaking, but still, solid story. I was like on the edge of my seat. That was unreal.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite Golf Canada, Team Canada memories, because love the guys. We invested so much time. Our goal was to win that. Now, we didn't achieve the goal, but to know, like the players all played unreal. We lose to Denny McCarthy, who's one of the best players in the world, Bryson DeChambeau, and Bo Hostler, all 3 PGA Tour players, and Adam Svensson, Terry Pendrith, and Corey Connors. What are the chances all 6 of those players are on the PGA Tour? I mean, the chances of that are almost zero. So pretty cool.
Yeah. Did you know, to touch on your coaching aspect is, you said you didn't go up to Corey when he was going down that hole. You weren't going to say anything to him. You usually never do. Do you just know when guys like, was it Adam you said that you went up to and you're like, hey, we need this 30? Do you know when those guys, like, some guys, they have the fire inside, so they don't need that, but some guys, they love getting built up, and I know golf's a pretty emotional sport, but somebody's got to stay level headed. Guys, like, as your coaching philosophy, when you need to pump them up or like pull on the brakes a little bit?
Yeah. Like, I knew those players really, really well, and I love them and respect them. And I'd have hours in the bank with those players. They knew Derek Ingram. All he cared about was them as a person, as a golfer, and, not just a golfer, more of a person. And they knew me. And so in Corey's case, I didn't need to tell him. He was in the last group. He was our anchor. I mean, he was as smart as it gets. He was aware of everything. But with Svenny, he's kind of free flowing, and, I don't know. I wasn't sure if he was aware. I knew Taylor. I didn't have to talk to Taylor because he was beating Bo Hostler by like 4 or 5 shots. So we had the third guy covered. We just needed a tie, and so I needed Svenny to tie Denny. And anyway, so yeah, I felt like, and this is out of character for me, but I thought the timing's right, and I think Svenny can handle this. So I'm going to go tell him. But normally I'm a process, work your process, play the back. But in this one instance, it worked out perfectly. But I know Svenny was probably shocked because the look in his eyes like, oh, okay, DI. And boom, he buried it. So it worked out. But yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, I love that. I know, like, especially with me, if you told me I had to put a ball in the fairway, I'd crack under pressure. So the high level stakes, like to be able to go up and be like, hey, we need this, and to perform to that level is, it just sort of speaks to their ability, and when you need a birdie and they can just sort of produce that on demand, it's pretty sweet to see. I guess just to close off a little bit on the Golf Canada side, we sort of opened up on how it's been growing, but where do you see golf or Canadian golf on all aspects sort of moving within the next 5, 10, 15 years down the road?
Well, I feel like we've had a great run on the men's side, and we're at the start of a great run on our women's side. And, a lot of factors have gone into these great runs. And it is a little bit cyclical on our men's side. Even recently, we haven't quite, obviously we had a nice run when you get Corey Connors, Taylor Pendrith, Mackenzie Hughes, Nick Taylor, Adam Svensson, Adam Hadwin, if you even look at Michael Gligic and Ben Silverman, like we've got a really big wave there. And a lot of those players were motivated by Mike Weir's win in 2003 at Augusta, and great provincial programs, the PGA of Canada, lots of stakeholders around Canada who've really been involved, including Golf Canada, but the PGA of Canada, the provincial associations, all of these things have played a role in this. And now we've been investing time and money and resources into building our program and touching more athletes at a younger level. And, with our talent ID, Tristan's involved with that. We're doing just some really amazing things. But it's hard. And I'm not going to stand here and BS you, Andrew, and say, hey, listen, every player in the PGA Tour is going to be, or the LPGA Tour is going to be Canadian. To get one out there requires, incredible work and a little bit of luck. But I like where we're going a lot. And now there's more role models, I would say, in the PGA Tour and the LPGA Tour than there ever have been. If you look, almost every single week you're looking at, Nick Taylor won a couple of weeks ago. And, like I was just mentioning to you before we got on the call, I was up with Corey and Taylor at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Corey finished third by himself. And then I was at the Players where Taylor finished 35th and Corey finished 6th. Taylor played the last round. The second last round was Scotty Scheffler and a twosome on Saturday. And Corey played the final round with Rory McIlroy on Sunday and finished 6th. So, if you're looking for role models on the PGA Tour, they're up every single week, which is incredible. And so I think that inspires athletes in Canada. And on the LPGA Tour, we got Brooke Henderson. Who better than, a Brooke Henderson? So if you're a young female in Canada and a young girl, and you want to be an LPGA Tour player, you've got the best role model maybe in the world. So I do feel like we're in a great spot the next 5 to 10 years, 15 years, and excited to play a small role in that next kind of next step to help that next generation.
Yeah, definitely. No, it is great to see every weekend when you throw on, Thursday, Friday, when you get to the Saturday, Sundays and those really important matches and you throw on the TV and you do see the Canadian guys doing their thing. It's good to see, even growing up, I was, like I said, I was mainly a hockey player, but I always knew a little bit of golf and all I knew was Mike Weir. And now it's throwing on the TV, I can name all the Canadians playing in every event. You got all of them highlighted where they're sitting in the standings, and they're not very low down the standings. They're 20 and above, which is sweet. Yeah. So it's pretty exciting as a fan, but also I'm sure as a player, as a young player in Canada, having something to aspire to and watch is also super exciting.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I guess we'll move a little bit into the Foresight side, have a little bit chat on regarding data points and whatnot. I guess especially as on the coaching side, how does technology, data analytics, and then performance tracking play a big role in day-to-day for yourself?
Well, I'm a huge numbers guy. I have been for many, many years. I feel like it's tough to make changes unless you're going to back those with data. I'm not a guy who's trying to make swings look prettier. I'm trying to make them look more efficient, not look more efficient, perform more efficiently. All I care about is the results. Can we produce this under a high level of stress and consistently? And so having, tools that allow you to do that are huge, and stats are gigantic. And just, you look at the PGA Tour now, it's incredible. I go to every second or third tournament on the PGA Tour. I go to the Korn Ferry Tour, and there's Foresight quads everywhere, and there's other technologies as well. And it's really good. Some old school people say it's too much and it's ruining some of the feel of the game. But I think actually when I look at like a Corey or a Taylor, knowing the numbers and backing it by science allows them to play by feel. It allows them to play instinctually. It allows them to play creatively because they've got that backbone or that background of all the analytics and the stats to say, oh yeah, I can play, I can do that. So, I guess maybe I'm new school in so many ways, even though I'm a teeny bit older coach, but I can ring out a million examples. One of the simplest ones is at the Arnold Palmer last week. We're warming up. It's blowing 30 miles an hour out there. And, with other technologies, it's telling you how far the ball goes, but you're into the wind 30, you're hitting your 7-iron. These are guys who normally fly their 7-iron 185 or 190, and it's going 123 yards. You're like, I don't even want to see that. So having the Foresight quad, and they get pissed off or they get a little angry. Having the Foresight quad down, they can hit a shot and the ball, but they look down and go, yeah, okay, I'm hitting my stock. That's my stock 7-iron. And, I want to take some spin off it, or I want a little less spin axis, or I want it to draw a little bit less, or I want it to cut a little bit more. And working with that just really allows them to fine tune some of those feels before they get in the golf course on a really, really difficult day. So another great example, but especially with the quad, is when we were at Pebble Beach, and we're at sea level, it's cold in the morning, and like guys are like using different technologies, and Taylor's like, I need your quad. I want to know how far this is actually going, given the temperature and we're at sea level. I want to know what's actually going on with the golf ball. And so really real cool things. And I mean, you'd be amazed, Andrew, at how good the players are with the technology. Back in the old day, they'd be like, listen, Derek, I want you to know, and tell me. And so I still have a little bit of that with stuff I do, like 3D, like I'll get my guys measured on 3D every year. And they're like, listen, yeah, I trust you. You take that information and, you let me know what I need to do with my swing. I don't want to get into that. I'm like, all right, no worries. And some players want to know. But anyway, like in terms of ball speed, like Corey will tell you the ball speed on every single club that he hits. And he'll also tell you the ball speed on every shot he hits. And it'll be extremely as accurate as your Foresight quad. Like, it's incredible, the accuracy. So, and I'm amazed by that, because some of the numbers, like obviously carry distance is an important number, right? If you're a golfer, but ball speed or spin or the amount of spin, like he'll be able to, like I guess they're just, their feel for it is so incredibly good now with practicing with technologies like that. They're as good as the technologies almost.
Touch on the Corey and his numbers and how dialed he is in those. Is we were at an event and we're at 2 holes doing a call your carry, know your numbers sort of challenge. And obviously he rolled through and he's like, oh, you want to see how well I sort of know my numbers? And he's like, watch, I'm going to take a hit. It was a swing, it was driver. I'm going to take a swing. As soon as I follow through, I'm just going to keep looking up and I'll tell you what numbers I hit. I'll tell you the spin rate. I'll tell you the ball speed, and then maybe like trajectory or something like that. And he was off by like, spin rate was off by like 100 revolutions, which is nothing, 2,400 to 2,500, something like that, or maybe even less than that. Ball speed is off by like 0.2 miles per hour. And we're all like dumbfounded. We're like, oh my, he's like, I just use these so much to the point where like, I know it by swing feel. Obviously he's a great golfer. He knows his feel by a mile. So his feels, but also, like you said, having the numbers to always back up the feeling and the natural side of the game just sort of compounds it to understanding all aspects of your game. And he said that I can, based off every swing, I now know by using your data so often that I know exactly what numbers that swing produced, which was like unreal. It was so cool.
It is amazing. And I'll like when he's hitting shots, I'll reach over after the impact and I'll just cover my hand in the screen of the quad. And I'll say, okay, well, what was the spin axis on that? Or what was the spin rate on that? Or what was the carry distance on that? What was your ball speed on that? And like Andrew, it's incredible. I would say there's probably 2 people on earth or 3 people on earth that are that dialed in. Maybe Scotty Scheffler. I think Corey Connors is as well. And possibly Xander or Colin Morikawa. But I like, and lots are good, but these guys are incredible with numbers. And Corey's a numbers guy. He's got an actuary math degree. I mean, he's a smart guy, but he plays by feel. Like, he knows those numbers, but he plays by feel out in the golf course.
Exactly. Yeah. And by knowing the numbers allows you to play by feel a little bit more confidently, I'd say.
No question.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a cool little anecdote. I'm glad we touched on that. That was sweet. So I guess, sort of what we talked about there, but what specific data points are you necessarily looking for? Does it change every practice session? Does it change when you're doing, say you're doing some just swing mechanics indoors, but then you go out and you're doing sort of like on course data metrics? How often is it changing? How often are you looking at certain metrics and points?
Yeah, I think it depends on the quality of the player or how their level a little bit, and also depends what time of the year we're working and what specifically we're working possibly on in their golf swing. For core, obviously carry distance is number one. We look at spin axis, so face to path relationship is super important. We look at spin a lot as well. And another super interesting Corey thing is like he can tell the difference between the range balls of Pro V1X or Pro V1 that we're hitting on the range, brand new, perfect balls in practice, and the ball he uses in tournaments, which is, I believe, the left star, star ball, 2000 and I should know. I think it's their spinniest golf ball that Titleist makes. So, as an example, we'll be doing some testing. I'll give him 18 yards for 6 shots, and I'll give him 6 different shots carry distances with those irons, and he's got 18 yards total to get those shots done. And he'll beat me every single time on that, by the way, but for carry distance. But anyway, so as an example, I'll say 163. He'll hit at 161. We subtract 2 yards from his 18 yards on that first shot. So, but anyway, he'll hit a shot, and we're using brand new Pro V1 range balls, and he'd be like, "Oh, I got a flyer there." You could see that no spin on it. That went way further, and like he's making these adjustments from the feel and the sight and the shot, and he'll be like, "I know that shot with my ball is going to go 181, but I know because it didn't spin, I'm using this ball, that it's flowing 185, and I'll take my hand off, boom, 186. He'll be off by 1 yard, and the spin, he'll be like, that spins down 600 RPM, and it's down 700 RPM. So it's just amazing, the numbers. So anyway, I guess more specific to your question, I look, obviously carry distance is the most important thing for me. And then we're looking at the relationship between club and path and angle of attack. So club face at impact, the path at impact, and the angle of attack. Those are other numbers that are extremely important to me. Obviously, contact with the club face, or the solidness of hit is super important too, because even a slight toe or heel hit can take some yardages off and allow the ball to curve a little bit more, especially with the driver. But then we get into some things that are, maybe not, like spin axis is the one that maybe not a lot of people look at, but I'm always looking at it because I want a consistent curvature of the golf ball for the players I coach. And so that's something that's super important. And then again, if there's anything we might be looking, at someone's swing, if we're working in pitching and chipping, trying to get a little bit more down on it, a little deeper angle attack, maybe from somebody who is possibly a little shallower, or if they're too steep, we're trying to get, their angle attacks too down. We were trying to get a little shallower. We'll might highlight a few points like that. Obviously, we use ball speed a ton. So yeah, I mean, I can't even tell you, like in some cases, I just automatically assume everybody talks this language every second of every day. And sometimes when I'm talking to somebody about a parameter, they're just kind of looking at me going, I don't even know what that is, or what you need to explain what we're looking for here. And it's just the world we live in right now and having that information and then not having it, Andrew, is tough. You want to have it at all times.
Yeah, 100%. A common topic that we always talk about is that there's so many parameters that you throw them up all on the screen and somebody's like, oh my, someone like yourself is like, oh, doing the math behind it.
Yeah.
But somebody who's a little more amateur is like, oh my God, like what am I looking at? And I'm sure even younger aspiring juniors who are pretty good players, but on the Canadian side, they probably have a lot of those data metrics too. We're like, oh my gosh, like can we sort of dumb this down into the most necessary ones? And you find you do that where sometimes you're trying to just throw in, let's look at 1 or 2 metrics, see how those correlate.
Yes. Well, and for driver, like it's funny, I didn't mention balls smash factor, but for driving, for tee shots, smash factor is something that's extremely important, and one of the ones I'd look at for sure. And that's another one of those parameters that Corey's unreal. It's like he'll tell you that one's 1.47 and that one's 1.47, 1.48, and I'll be like, how do you know? Like that's a function between the solidness of contact and the speed the club's going, and so and like how do you? And he just has that feel for it. But yeah, and I do like to I like to highlight 2 or 3 things. I don't, sometimes even one thing. I got a funny story though about Dustin Johnson. I'm not sure if he's a Foresight guy or not, but I saw him working with his Foresight a couple of years ago, and maybe it was, I don't know, and walking by, and the only number him and his coach were looking at, they only had one number up, and it was carry distance. I was thinking to myself, here's at that point he was, I think, 1 or 2 in the world. Here's the best player in the world working with this sweet piece of technology, and they've got one number on their iPad. Carry distance only. I was like, wow, I never even thought of that. Like I thought, again, you have to use the tool what's best suits you in the game and what you're looking for. And so it's really highly individual to the athlete that I'm working with at that time.
100%. Do you, I guess I do have a question just regarding like individual athletes, but, when it comes to each athlete, high level, amateur level, but do you find you got to change it a little bit per player, or do you just sort of have an overall umbrella style of coaching that you like to ingrain in all players?
Yeah, I think from a technique standpoint, everybody is a completely different individual that stands in front of you, and they have different skill sets, different sizes, weights, flexibilities, their body moves differently, and they also think differently. So I am not a method teacher. I teach one way to everybody. If you look at Corey, he almost exclusively hits draws. Like if he hits 2 shots in a row and they don't draw, I get a phone call or a text message immediately. With Taylor likes to cut his driver and draw his irons. When I coached Mac Hughes, he won playing fades almost exclusively. But Mac's actually been a guy who's played great by hitting draws and hitting fades, which is kind of interesting. And so if you look at Mac's swing now, I don't coach Mac, but it's shorter. It's really flat and deep. And, if you look at Taylor's swing, it's kind of very vertical. The lead arm is super vertical. And then there's a lot of, little down shift or down lagging, coming underneath it with Taylor. And, that's just kind of how their DNA works. And have we polished it? Yes. But do I try and make everyone swing the same? Definitely not. And so I believe you have to work with the individual, and even as far as like a guy like Corey, sometimes I'll be working with him and his caddy Danny Saul, who might be working on some things in the short game, and Danny will throw a few things out there, and I'll throw a few things out there, and Corey, like in Hawaii, he's like, hey, listen, guys, too much stuff here. I want one thing. Don't give me all these things to work, and that's great feedback for us because we're trying to help. We've got a decent amount of knowledge, but he's great feedback for him and the confidence to say, listen, time out. You give me 4 or 5 things, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going to be able to, hit this shot. I want one thing from you guys.
Yeah.
And you got to consolidate it. And here's what I think it should be out of those 5 things you gave me. And boom, all of a sudden. So that's where that coaching relationship and that trust is really important. It's just not me showering people with my brilliance. That'd be a short conversation, Andrew. It's a 2-way street, and so a team effort. So anyway, a little bit of a window on how people work.
Yeah, I was going to include a question on the write up here, but of the caddy coach relationship.
Yeah,
because that's got to be a pretty interesting dynamic. I know, it's the coach has such a close relationship with the player, but the caddy also has such a close relationship, and they're very different.
Yeah.
But also the same at the same time. But do you find it tough to, do you relay with the caddy where like, hey, this is what I'm sort of thinking of working on, and then he like discusses that throughout more naturally throughout a round, sort of hints at it, or how does that relationship sort of work?
Yeah, I mean, I find myself coaching the caddy and the player as well, and we're certainly a team. The caddy's got a ton of value as well. Before some of these players got to the PGA Tour, nobody spent more time with them than Derek Ingram. Like I'd spend more time with them than their wives and their family, mom and dad. It was crazy, 100 days a year, sometimes 10 hours a day. But now the caddy spends more time with them than anybody on the planet. And so they're a very important part of the team. And I like to coach the caddy on how to coach the player. I like to coach the caddy on how to talk to the player under the gun, under the heat, just give them some tips on, hey, here's, when they're really, really, so, with example, Taylor Pendrith, I'll talk to Mitch. I'll say, hey, Mitch, when he's freaking out or the temperature goes up out there, we got a chance to win. I want you to make sure you say his name and put your hand on his shoulder just before he hits it. Say, Taylor, you got this. And because Taylor saying his name will help him, bring him down to present immediately instead of if his mind's racing. And that feel or that touch also brings him to the present moment. So just little tips here, coaching the caddy, and they're all part of the team. And they're such a valuable part of the team, Andrew. Like I can't tell you how important it is to have great caddies like Danny Saul and Mitch Thierret with those players, because they're sometimes a conduit and they're the eyes for you as a coach. So, I'll talk to them after every round in some cases, just like I will the players. So it's been great. We've got a really nice team of guys to work with, and fortunate enough, it's been working.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a very cool dynamic, the caddy coach, caddy player, coach player relationship, where there's, sort of a love triangle, I guess, and it all works, simultaneously. It gets, but it is cool. It's something that, a cool one I was happy we got to touch on. And then, I think just to finish off, we'll do just a couple for fun ones, a couple get to know DI questions. To start, how many rounds are you playing a year right now?
Well, no one pays me to play, but I love to play. I love the game, and when I'm home, I try to play just because I love the game. I've got two boys at home who are 21 and 23, so I try and get out and play with them for 9 or 18. I got some great friends in Manitoba that I love to play, but I'm playing less now than I ever have, and that's just because I'm on the road with Golf Canada and also coaching some guys on the PGA Tour, and so I'm not around as much as I'd love to be. I'm trying to stay married still for another few years, but I probably play. I play more when I go down on holidays. We'll go down at Christmas time, and I might play 6 times in 8 days, and then I won't touch my clubs until June 15th. I might hit some balls in the sim though, and I probably play more sim golf now than I do outside. Anyway,
glad to hear. I know. I guess for you, like, playing less golf is a good sign. Obviously, you want to play as much golf as you can, but for you, playing less is probably a pretty good sign for yourself.
Yeah, I want to get back to playing more golf because I'm competitive and I love it. But anyway. Maybe later.
Yeah, being busy is always good. Second one, best. I know we touched on best Golf Canada memory, but just best golf memory, the date, hole in one, maybe a course you got to play, an event you got to attend.
Well, first time ever going to Augusta was probably, and the Masters with Corey was probably one of my biggest, dreams come true. That was incredible. And then I'd say I have 3. Like when Mac won on the PGA Tour and I was coaching him, that was really special. Really just for him, you work with a player for 10 or 12 years, and they achieve their dream of getting a PGA Tour card, and then they win. And same for when Corey won, and then last year when Taylor won. Those are you never dream that you're gonna have a player even get to the PGA Tour, never mind win of the PGA Tour. So those are really special moments for me.
Yeah, definitely. I know your past year has been really busy. You got to get to some great events like the Olympics and the Presidents. Best golf memory from this past year, maybe like a little anecdote, a little story from either of those?
Well, I actually, probably the best memory, I should say, is this year at the President's Cup at Royal Montreal, because never in a million years did I think I'd have 3 players that I coached for 10 plus years at the President's Cup, and Matt, Corey, and Taylor there. That was super special, and really, really hits you like, wow, I remember these guys were 19 or 18 or 17 or 20 or 21, and now 15 years later, they're grown men with wives and families, and they're playing in the President's Cup representing the international team. So that's probably one of them. And I guess the other one is being at the Olympics this year. 3rd Olympics I've been to and this year with Corey, and I was at the second one I was at with Corey and Mac, but this one with Corey and Nick Taylor. I helped Nick Taylor as well as a junior and an amateur, and even as a pro, and he's a wonderful guy, an unreal guy. And so to be there with Corey and Taylor at the Olympics was pretty special as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I assumed. Yeah, those are 2 like bucket lists right there, just to attend, let alone be a participant and coach at. And I got sort of rapid fire questions. Favorite swing on the tour? Maybe non-Canadian. We touch a lot of Canadians, or maybe Canadian if there's a true favorite.
Such a hard question. From a rhythm standpoint, I'll take Corey Connors over anybody. From a favorite swing on tour, I love Sam Snead. I'm an old guy. I love the fluidity of Sam Snead's motion. I still think it's stood the test of time. But if you want me to moderate it up a little bit, tough to argue with Rory McIlroy. I think too. I'm the worst quick hit guy, by the way, Andrew. You're gonna be like,
that's okay. It's all good.
But Corey, playing with Rory and Corey, and I've said this for years. The 2 guys who move off the golf ball, I'm gonna get up here, move off the golf ball more are Rory and Corey. Like, you'll see them start here. They'll get behind the ball and then they'll move into the ball. And those 2 guys move off the ball and move into the ball, and they swing so similarly. And so those are a couple of my, maybe my favorite swings.
Yeah, love it. Favorite golf course in Canada?
I like the back nine at Glen Abbey. I think it's underrated, super exciting, down in the valley, some unreal holes, par 5, so lots of changes. Hamilton's incredible. No, I'll leave it at that because my quick hit records is getting taken.
All good. They're all good stories. So I would say Hamilton, love Hamilton, great course, fun to play. Superstitious or not?
Not really, but if I find a dime or a penny or a nickel on the ground, I'll pick it up and I'll know I'm going to have 5 days of good luck. But I'm not generally overly superstitious. I believe in just working the process day to day and doing the right thing over a long period of time, and you'll be okay.
Nice. Early morning tee time or late afternoon?
Yes.
Any tee time.
I like both. I like getting out there super early, being first off. Nothing makes me happier. I also like being out there at 7 or 8 o'clock at night where it's just, it's dusk coming and you own the golf course. No better feeling in the world than doing that.
What sport would you play or coach if it couldn't be golf?
Absolutely hockey, 100%. I love the game. Coached my kids growing up, taken some of the higher level coaching course in hockey because I love it. So, and I still love hockey. Like if I'm home in the evening, which I'm not home very often, but when I am home, you can guarantee I'm watching 1 or 2 games. I just love the game. And my son plays college hockey, Division I college hockey in the U.S. So we love hockey here.
Sweet. We'll have to touch on that after because I also played Division I hockey, so we can.
When you
said
that, I was like, I want to talk to you about this, but offline, I guess.
Yeah. Final one: best piece of advice you've given or received.
Best piece of advice I've given is people don't care what you know until they know that you care. So people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And to me, that's how I've lived my life as a coach and tried to live my life as a person. And I think that's what's made me a good coach, someone who cares about people and has helped them achieve their goals. So that's the best piece of advice probably that I've given. I stole that from a very famous CIS college basketball coach in Canada, one of the most famous ones. I think his name was Phil Donahue. But anyway, I love that. And then best advice given to me. I mean, I just try and do the right thing every day and treat people with respect. I believe everybody's got an interesting story and something to share, and I'm super interested in that. And so it's probably important for me to keep my mouth shut and my ears open.
Love it. Awesome. Well, yeah, that sort of concludes. I appreciate you taking the time to chat. I hope you guys enjoyed. We're going to post this on the YouTube channels and also offer some reels on our socials. So DI, thanks again. We'll talk soon and really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew.